Lights, camera, action. This is the Red Carpet Podcast with your hosts, Luke Andersen and Dane Salmons. Hello once again and welcome back to the Red Carpet Podcast. As always, I am Dane Salmons and I'm joined by my co-host, Luke Andersen.
Hey, hi.
Hello.
Hola.
Let's talk about our favorite movies here because Halloween is my favorite season of the year. Like Halloween season. It is a season to me. 31 days of Halloween. That's like the most exciting 31 days of the year for me. Yeah. Just like a whole month devoted to just the spookiest stuff. I love this freaking month so much.
Yeah.
I don't know where you sit on it, but
no, I mean it's wonderful. I've thought about it a lot recently, and I've just kind of realized that each year I think I like Halloween a bit more, just because it's such a it's like the antithesis of like every other holiday.
Yeah.
Right? Every other holiday is like celebrating goodness, and
yeah.
this one is just freaking brutal.
Yeah. Well, goodness is for suckers anyways. So this has always been my favorite because I just love horror and getting scared and just the whole idea of scary, spooky things. And so this episode is super special because we're going to spend the next 45-ish or so minutes talking about scary movies because we went and on our own time, we went and watched two movies that were recommended to us and said, okay, we're going to watch these, we're going to reflect on them, and then we're going to talk about them with each other. Yeah. And I'm excited because the first movie we're going to talk about is one of my absolute favorites of all time. Well, top three. It is the original 1978 Halloween from John Carpenter starring Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes.
One of my absolute favorite horror movies of all time, if not one of my favorite films of all time.
Right. And I think a good place to start here, I think some background as far as our experience with horror movies in general, because it is some vastly different experience in terms of, it's been the difference between you and I in terms of the amount of time that we've spent has been pretty astounding. It's been a situation where I've hardly seen a horror movie. I just get naturally just crazy anxious whenever I'm out there waiting for the next jump scare. But regardless, I buckled down and said, I'm going to do this. And also, there's been a number of horror movies I've really wanted to see, but have just not just gotten over myself and gone and seen them. And I had a pretty wonderful time. Even if I was terrified, I had a marvelous time watching both the movies that we're talking about today.
Exactly.
So, yes.
So, I just want to start off because, like I said, I don't know if I can, hype it up any more than I already have, but Halloween is just my favorite. It's so good. This is one of those movies that I go back and I rewatch every once in a while because I think it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And so, just talking about it a little bit, I think Halloween on its own is one of those movies that I watched and it helped me click one of the most important things of a movie for me. It's because beforehand it's I always just watch movies oh yeah, this is good, and I was always I don't know why I like it as much as I do, but Halloween is a movie that really made things click. And that's the importance of an incredible score and an incredible soundtrack to a movie. Because I don't think, as much as I love this movie, I don't think there's a better part of the film itself than its incredible synth score that was done by the director himself, John Carpenter.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic, right? It's absolutely classic. It's something where watching it, because so while I don't have a lot of experience with horror, I do have a lot of experience with just John Carpenter because his style has just seeped into every crevice of I think modern movies. But going back and kind of taking a look at some of those things, the origins, and knowing that, that prime synth score that permeates through, so much 80s stuff and kind of seeing some of its origins, it was really special. It was interesting because I don't think I realized how much, this is going to sound strange. It's going to sound like a critique, but it's not. Mm-hmm. They use that same da da da, da like obviously
Yeah.
that's what people remember, but if you go back and you watch that, that's like the only song in that movie. There are other
there's
bits,
a few, but it's iconic.
It is so iconic, and it's like every time it hits.
Yeah,
it's just,
and there's a few, because, like, I mean, the most iconic one is the
Right.
that's used, and it's iconic. But there are a few others, like you have Laurie Strode's theme, which is the
oh yeah, totally.
Is that
Beautiful,
Is that
beautiful
Strode's?
work.
I might be getting the wrong track, but Strode
Regardless.
has her own theme.
Yeah.
And then there's also the like the chase theme, the dun dun dun.
I really love these acapella.
Did it? I mean, it's so simple that you can do it without like
It
completely
really is.
embarrassing yourself.
But it is wonderful, and every one of those I think does add
Yeah.
so much. I mean,
it's beautiful in its simplicity.
it's a great example of how to use music in a restrained way, because I think there are large swaths of that movie that have just no music at all, and it's great. It's just environmental noise, and it's terrifying.
It is. It's really good. It's just like the environmental thing, and like the soundtrack. It's so simple. It doesn't go out of its way to do anything. It's like these really simple like chords that they use. Like even one of the most iconic ones, just the did it, as like Michael Myers starts hunting somebody, and it's like it's so simple, it's so easy, and yet it sticks with you, and it does its job of like super effectively, and you see it like even in movies today, like recently It Follows came out a few years back, and its soundtrack was it feels like it was directly inspired by films like Halloween, where they use like the synth score to like kind of make their soundtrack, like where like It Follows used that synth sound and had like the like chasing theme
for real.
And it's like it's fantastic. It's like nothing like extravagant, nothing crazy like some other like horror movies like try and have like these full epic scores, and this one is just keeps it as simple as possible, and it just excels. And the remake, the most recent sequel that came out in 2018 does this as well, because they got John Carpenter back to do a new score. And while it was a little more like some of the tracks were like thematic, a little more remixed and like thematic, a lot of like their best tracks, like their best original tracks, like kept it pretty simple in and of itself. And I just have to give it to John Carpenter, because he not only directed, but he did the score of just a fantastic score, and just really like made one of the best indie horror films like of all time.
Yeah, I think you keep kind of pointing to simplicity and sound, and I think if there are two kind of defining traits of this movie, I think it's those things. The simplicity is so it's in every part of it too. It's something where like just the sound of the breathing. Every time you hear the breathing, I kid you not, this happened. I knew that something like this was going to happen. I was going to have some story, but I literally was after it had finished. I think I was on my computer or something, typing up probably notes for this, and someone walked past my door, and they had just gotten back from like a walk, and they're breathing super heavily. One of my roommates. Yeah. And I just hear this. And great, I'm gonna breathe into this mic. People are gonna love it. But the point is I did have like I turned my head. I reacted because I was like, oh, because that is the only sound he makes, I think, in that entire movie.
It is.
And so it's just this breathing, and as simple as that is, it delivers the story, right? And along with those lines of simplicity, I think the way that movie continuously while it is continuously trying to scare you constantly, like even when it's not being scary, it is constantly trying, like suspense is there in this movie, but it is there in bits and spurts while you're just constantly getting hit by, she runs into the sheriff or like, something like that. Anyways, but the way that movie starts as being something that is very normal, like super normal suburbia, like very well it is odd. I guess it doesn't start quite like that, as we know, but it's shot almost. I was sitting there kind of like, well, this is kind of boring. Like these girls walking home from school, and and there's a car driving by, and it's not especially color, it's obviously wasn't color graded at that point,
Yeah.
but there's nothing that creepy about the constant until the end, until like the climax.
But I think part of it as well is like, as far as like build up, it's like Michael Myers is really just stalking them throughout the movie.
Right.
And like you'll see it like where he just stands there like watching, or like when the car just drives by and it's Michael Myers like in that escape car, and it's just like nothing's happening, but he's just watching, and they're just like, oh, cool. And one of the cool things, one of my favorite things, they did this in the sequel too, is where like people are getting killed, and like they like switch up the tension of like people getting hunted, stalked, and murdered by this absolute psychopath with shots of just children enjoying their Halloween in the town, while like literally a block away someone just got stabbed and strangled. And it's the idea, because another movie that did it incredible was Spotlight, where it was like Spotlight did this, where it's like they did a shot and they talk to a pedophile in the movie Spotlight, and he's just like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. It's like this horror of like, it's just this child molester like standing there, and then the next shot is like the person like disgusted walking away, and just kids ride by their bikes right in front of their house. And it's just this idea of like innocence, childlike innocence, like this close to evil. And I think those kind of shots are so fantastic, of like the dichotomy of evil and like how evil can be right there. And I think the idea of Michael Myers, there's so much I want to talk about with like the characters. There's so many like strings
I was gonna say
talk about.
Because of your horror is your favorite genre, right?
Yeah.
Or one of them. And so you are so much more intimately aware of the genre that I'm sure you have a million more things to say.
I know.
I guess the one thing that I would also say is it was the way the cinematography worked. I kind of talked about how it was kind of dull. I use the term dull, but I mean I don't mean that in a bad way, which sounds crazy. But when things are intense in that movie is when the cinematography is at its best, and I think that's a really cool idea. Because what they do is they really that I think helps enforce it's an everyday situation, like that whole everyday situation when you least expect it, right? I mean, that's what that whole movie's about. It is about when you're walking around and you hear like something out of the corner, you see something off the corner of your eye or something like that. That's the entire movie, when she's going to the laundry to go do her laundry.
And he's just standing there. And they use the same shot multiple times. Like a lot of just the shots of Michael is literally just an over the shoulder shot with his breathing like during the film. And it's like those over the shoulder shots are like used very like a lot in the film, but I think they're effective, and like just watching, like you're watching almost not directly, but it's almost like from Myers' point of view, and it's like they're just going about their lives and he's just standing there watching, and it's effective. I think they work really well. And I think you ever, I think I mentioned it to you earlier, you ever hear the Seinfeld isn't funny trope?
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea that a movie like the people say Seinfeld isn't funny because every other sitcom since Seinfeld was released has directly copied what Seinfeld does. And so I feel like Halloween's my favorite, but I am always consciously aware that there are people that will watch this movie and say, oh, it's okay, not realizing like the reason they might not like it is because they've seen it in every other horror movie since. This movie and my other favorite, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directly inspired what would become the modern day slasher genre. Yeah. And there's so many elements of that, like a singular person that's hunting people, like teenagers that are getting killed. The person that survives is the typical innocent bookworm character that like has no interest in like the smoking and the sex and everything. So it's just a lot of those elements that are copied over. And another element that I want to talk about that is copied over from that movie is the idea of an immortal killer. So you see it in Friday the 13th more prominently, where it's like you're not the first one, but like in the sequels where it's like Jason Voorhees is like this immortal slasher that just is butchering like these teenagers in like the most ridiculous ways. And no matter what they do, he comes back. Halloween really started that with the idea of like Michael Myers being immortal, but I think Halloween did it the most effectively because, and that's why I want to talk about the main character of this movie, Sam Loomis. Sam Loomis is the funniest character in this movie because he just shows up and he's just this doctor and everyone's like, how can we help you, Sam? And he's like, you are being hunted down. You're all going to die. The devil has come to this town. You pack your children and get out. And they're like, I'll pay you $100 if you'll F off right now.
Yeah. Like, and what I did appreciate is they didn't go full trope in the like, he just isn't being trusted. And so like the police are like, okay, like we'll take this seriously, you know, like.
Yeah, but it's always like this idea that Sam Loomis is he's a little loony. Yeah. And you think that. And that's where I think a large plot of the movie is effective, is the idea that he's saying Michael Myers is pure evil. He's the devil. And you're like, he's just a guy that broke out of a loony bin and he's hunting these people, especially back then when it's just like this wasn't a big popular genre yet. And so he's like, Michael Myers is the devil. Evil has come. Death has come to your town, sheriff. And it's like, whatever. It's like the devil's eyes, things like that. And you're like, Sam Loomis, this goofy guy. And then right in the climax when he's going for Laurie, what happens? He gets stabbed in the neck with, I think, a sewing needle. Then stabbed in the eye with a coat hanger, and then stabbed with a knife, and he keeps coming back, and you're like, whoa, this guy is insane. He's coming back. Then right at the end, Loomis comes in and shoots Myers, I think.
Like 7 times or something?
Yeah, 6 or 7 times.
I was actually counting it like subconsciously.
Which sends Myers and causes him to tumble off the roof, and you're like, okay, he's dead. And he's like, and so he goes and he looks, and Myers is gone. And it's so effective. Because like I don't think the idea of like an immortal killer was popular yet. And so like he's just like, Loomis is saying this is the devil, and you're like, haha, okay. And then right at the end he survives all of that and still gets away.
It saves until the end.
And it leaves it ambiguous. It's not like he pops up again and kills everyone. He just disappeared. Like he might have just crawled away and died somewhere else. In the sequel they said they found him passed out, which is okay, I guess. But in this one, it really portrays the idea like maybe he really is the devil. Yeah. Because he just got away after all that. And it left it just so open at the end. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of tropes we can talk about just in this movie between the idea of a bunch of folks doing premarital sex and getting killed, right? Course. Like that is like a common trope in slasher movies, and is on full display. The fact that he's apparently a mentally ill person who like it's the tropes are interesting because in other words, like, okay, like you've seen this all a million times now, but I was continuously having to reframe a little bit, but at the same time I think I was surprised at, as the movie went on, how much I was able to let all that drift away and just appreciate some decisions they made. Like how the camera is always super voyeuristic. It's always, even when it's not Voorhees, looking, it is, you have these shots that turn and then it'll be like behind a wall or something like that. Like they're all shots that look like that. There's one where Jamie Lee Curtis' character is running down the stairs and the camera follows her like this until it's behind the rails of the stairs. Right. And it's like that. At that point, she isn't being watched. It is just the way that they chose to film it to keep that voyeuristic look going. And I don't know. I think the start of this movie is like one of my favorite starts to a movie I've ever seen. Because I was not expecting. Because going in, I know nothing about this movie basically, right. And so I was sitting there just kind of like, oh, interesting. So we're gonna watch this person kill someone. Okay, great. And I was like, that was a weird looking hand. Because I almost wonder, I think they might have like a hand on a stick or something to like simulate. So what it was,
I can tell you what it was.
I imagine you can. Go for it.
So trivia fact. So you can finish your thought first if you want. Because basically the idea is that it was a kid. That did it right at the start. Like no older than 8 probably. It was a kid that did this. During that shot when it's like, it's Michael's point of view. And he's like got the knife in his hand. And it cuts and you see like this hand. And it's like, okay, it's a weird looking hand. So they couldn't get the child actor in time to do it. So okay. Carpenter's girlfriend, who was a co-writer for the film, actually filled in for that point of view shot to like, as it was her hand. Wow. As the child. And so, but yeah, you were saying like you had no idea. And it's like, that's a weird hand. And then it's just like, it was a kid that did it.
Yeah.
Me and my brother discussed this movie a lot, especially when compared to the Halloween remake, which was done by Rob Zombie, which is horrendous, horrible, disgusting. Actually, a 1 out of 10 movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like,
that sucks.
He tried so hard to portray Michael Myers as from like a broken home, whereas like his mom's a stripper and his dad's an abusive drunk and he's bullied at school and he's got like mental issues.
Are you telling me that he made the Joker?
He made the Joker.
He made Joker,
but in like 8-year-old form. And of course, every movie in a Rob Zombie movie, every woman has to be Sherry Moon Zombie, and every man has to be Rob Zombie in the film. Just long hair, beard, always, 100%. And it's like he tried so hard to portray Michael's from a broken home, and I don't think that's scary. What scares me the most about Halloween, the original, is my headcanon that Michael Myers is in the most average, like, good home, like, possible. Like, your average, like, hardworking dad that goes out for business and comes home and, like, plays with his kids and, like, plays baseball and, like, gives life lessons. His mom is, like, the stereotypical, slightly misogynistic 70s, like, mom, 50s mom probably at that point. 1950s housewife that like cooks and cleans and cares for her children, and his sister may be a little bratty, but she loves her younger brother. Like, oh, Michael, like give him a noogie, and then her boyfriend's always like, hey, Michael, and like claps his hand, and he like goes out trick or treating and comes home and just decides something in his brain for no reason just snaps. And he decides, I'm going to kill it. And I'm going to kill my sister. And you see that through the movie where it's not like he's being malicious, unlike in some movies where he's like vicious. He's literally almost more curious. And you see that, like even when he stabbed the one guy to the wall, like in the movie, he tilts his head, like looking at it. Like,
It's not, and that specifically, when I saw that shot, I thought the head tilt thing is so played out now. It really is like the creepy guy kind of looking and tilting his head at someone. But the way it was done there is so freaking good. It was like one of my favorite shots of the movie, and it definitely is probably something that people talk about. But it just like that, the one time I feel like it goes to a wide shot of just him and the victim. It is just him just staring at this dude who's just freaking impaled to the wall.
And I think it works best with Myers because like other killers do it because like, oh, look at how creepy he is. But Myers does it literally because he's probably still a child, more curious. Like he's not killing out of like violent intent. He's just killing because they're in front of him. Really,
there is
stalking, hunting. He's an animal, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Although I will say that one thing that felt kind of my last thought, as far as just the themes go, is like you have to talk about sex and death in this movie.
Yes,
you have to, because it's like 9 times out of 10 when he's killing someone, it's like right as soon as they're about to have sex, they're having sex, or it's after actually. Anyways, whatever. So they play with that a lot and make it wildly uncomfortable. Not just in like the nudity sense, or not like hanging super long on some naked person, but it's more when he goes in, when the door opens and Voorhees is covered in that, just in the like generic ghost costume, and wearing the glasses of her now dead boyfriend, and you're like, oh, okay. And she is like kind of like playing with him, assuming like, oh, you're just being silly, like, come on, let's do this thing. And the way that all is approached, I need to watch another more, because there's something there. There's some subject there, and it might just be that, hey, this is some really messed up voyeuristic stuff, but it would be ridiculous not to talk about it, because now it's a standard in the slasher genre. And at the time it was just this. Even when he kills the woman in her car, it is the most slow. It is a slow death. Like all the deaths are very slow. But it's just something where you're sitting there and you're like, okay, like just taking this in, and the way that the windows are being fogged.
Yeah, the noise, I think that gives it more weight too, because like in Friday the 13th, it's literally just he chops their head off and they're gone. These really drag out these deaths. Like he's strangling them.
Yeah.
He like stabs them and like chokes them. Like these are very long, stretched out deaths, and I think it's more weighty because you're watching people suffer as they're doing it instead of just like
disgusting and strange, and it's but it made the genre, right? Mm-hmm. So it's it was just something where at the time, like, I didn't feel offended by anything. It was just like, okay, that was a bold choice, right, to make. Anyway, but yeah, that's about it. Here's a few little trivia facts, like lightning round trivia about Halloween that I think you might be interested in. For starters, this movie was filmed in the spring instead of in the autumn. And so they had issues in the spring finding pumpkins and leaves. And so what they did was they had like a bag of leaves that they used for shots. And at the end of every scene, they had to recollect the leaves and like rebag them to use in the next scene. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, Deborah Hill, who was the co-writer and John Carpenter's at the time girlfriend, played Michael Myers at the start of the movie during that Michael's point of view scene. This was Jamie Lee Curtis's film debut. This was her very first movie. There was something else. Do you know how they made the Michael Myers mask?
I do not know.
The Michael Myers mask. Our cameraman just nodded. He knows. The Michael Myers mask was a painted or bleached, one of the two. It was a painted Captain Kirk mask that they painted white to make the Michael Myers setup. We have a visitor. We have a dog now.
Hi, friend.
And so that's just some of the trivia. So just real quickly, there's one more trivia, but I think I'll save it for a second. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rate Halloween? Because I'm going a 10. This is one of my top 10 movies of all time.
Oh gosh, I feel really weird about rating a movie that like this because it is such a classic. And I mean, I have to give it. I mean, now I want to be clear. I'm not. If you listen to some of our past shows, I'm not like comparing. I would probably give it an 8, but that is just by my like modern, just looking at it standards. But that being said, I think it's a class. Like in all reality, it's a 10. Like, it stands the test of time. It was more just like me going back to it for the first time. That was more my sight. But that's not a knock on it at all.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what it is about it that gives it an 8, other than like, oh yeah,
I'm thinking like
it is a quintessential horror.
As far as like pure film quality, like as far as now, it'd probably be an 8. But I'm just so passionate about this movie that I can't ignore it, and I have to go 10 because it's one of those movies that I'm so passionate about.
I think it's if there was a movie to be passionate about, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good because I think you're going where I want to go.
I was gonna say one last trivia fact about Halloween. During like when we cut to see like the kids, like that Laurie Strode is babysitting in this movie, and we cut to them, they're watching a movie called The Thing from Outer Space, right?
Yeah, totally. The Thing. Like there is like a 3-minute shot of just the logo of the Thing, which was
the original
wild.
The original 1950s The Thing from Outer Space, which in the 80s John Carpenter, who directed Halloween, would remake as just The Thing, starring Kurt Russell. And so it's really interesting that like he included that little movie in the film and then remade it years later. And it's one of the quintessential like sci-fi alien horror films, which, speaking of sci-fi alien horror films, one of the movies that is most directly compared to that film and like kind of like a versus kind of question is the original Alien from, I think it was the late 70s. I can't tell you the exact year. It was either,
do you have the year? 79.
I was going to say it was either early 80s or like the very end of the 70s. 1979's Alien.
Yeah.
And so I know you were excited about this one. So lead us off, Luke.
Yeah. Okay. So again, this is a movie that, while I've never seen it, this was one that I have been dying to see for a really long time. Like really long time. Like ever since I first saw some of the art that came from it, some of Geiger's work, right? I was like, okay, this seems really incredible. And I finally watched it a couple nights ago, and it genuinely, how you're feeling about Halloween is how I'm feeling about Alien. Mm-hmm. Alien to me was something that I think it's just a masterpiece. I think the music is brilliant. I think the special effects, shockingly enough, for the most part, hold up pretty freaking well. There are little bits and pieces here and there that are a little odd, but the way that the stuff that gets talked about in that movie, the iconography from that movie, like the alien and the egg, right? Like, to me, like, those things were like good, but it's like everything else in that movie is so freaking incredible. The whole twist with the robot halfway through it is phenomenal.
Yeah, with Ash.
Phenomenal.
And it's like,
I was just like, I was freaking out. Like, it was just, the story in that movie was wonderful. The way that it depicts men feels fascinating, coming from the time that it was made, where it is just every man is just a idiot, or they are just super subordinate. It's just fascinating. Like, just the way that they mix all this together was wonderful. Anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was gonna say, like, the characters all felt really real. One of the best parts about this movie is the writing and the script itself. It's just so effective. All the characters feel real. Like, instead of like the typical like screaming idiot characters, I think a lot of these characters like vary. Like, they're very human. Like, some of them are smarter than others. Some of them are like a little like, because you have, I can't remember her name. The other girl that isn't Ripley.
I can picture her. I don't.
She's a little like. She's kind of fills the role of like the screaming, crying,
she's
like female
sheepish,
horror character. But then you got like, you know what I think is really cool about this movie, especially when you talk about the twist with Ash being an android in the movie. Which, if you haven't seen the film, I'm so sorry. We just spoiled that super hard. But what's effective is that outside of Ash, all of these characters, like, their writing and their dialogue feel incredibly real. And it's like they speak like they're space truckers, you know, which they kind of are. They're like space truckers. Oh, it's
truckers. Great. It's their whole vibe is just like her being like, one more job. Every one of them. I mean, the twist in this movie basically changes the entire, like, a lot of the theme of it, where it's basically like, oh no, this is about working in a company that is indifferent to you. This is about working in a place where you are just the bottom line for something that is just trying to be pursuant of just a kind of messed up aim. I guess the thing that I'm talking about here, of course, is that kind of this, again, we're spoiling hard here, but the major twist being, oh, hey, guess what? All along, this was something where they were trying to just kind of twist these miners into doing their bidding, and in the end they realize, oh no, like, all along they knew that this horrendous creature was going to climb aboard. They knew that we were going to be infected. They knew all this stuff was going to happen, and they wanted it to happen so that we could get this thing back, so maybe they could use it as a weapon or something.
Yeah.
All that to me says that this is a movie about every step that humanity takes in this movie to either explain it or to understand what's happening to them or to fix the situation only makes it worse.
Right.
And only propels the folly of it all just further and further as it goes along. And anyways, I just thought the themes were just so special, but that was kind of like the bottom layer of this sheet cake for me. I think the way it's shot is incredible.
Yeah, it's really well shot, but I think besides like how well it's written and how well it's acted, like, Sigourney Weaver in this is like incredible. She's such a badass in this film,
straight up,
and especially at a time when like your horror, like your like final girls in your horror movies were supposed to be like these very like virgin-esque like characters. Sigourney Weaver is a breakthrough of like this smart, this badass woman that is able to fight back and kill this thing. Like, she's still human, where it's not like she's just like, she's not Sarah Connor where she's just like, I'm gonna whatever, right. You like, y'all are done now. She's just like, she's a very realistic, like, she's scared, she's panicking, but she's BA enough that she's able to fight back, and it's really cool. But the point I'm trying to make is that the most incredible part of this movie is the set design itself.
Yeah.
Astounding set design.
My favorite set design maybe in a movie. I was
thinking about this recently, because like I was thinking about it. I've seen Alien before, and I rewatch it. I'm just like, when was the last time a movie's set design was this good? There are movies like today that come out that are not as like well designed as this film. It's just astounding how like gorgeous like the world building is in this movie and just the little details surrounding them.
We were talking a bit in one of my classes about Scorsese and Gangs of New York when he was he was talking to the production designer about designing stuff for it, and how they were using Rembrandt as their what they were referring to. And as I was watching, I still need to go back and look, because as I was watching Alien, the thing that I kept thinking about was there's so much here that I've never seen in my entire life that I couldn't have even fathomed with H.R. Geiger. Just the stuff that he created and the world that he created. It's like, I don't know where that came from. And what I love is that for it being a science fiction movie, it doesn't just go out of its way to just not explain anything. Right. Like, it doesn't explain anything. It actively fights against the attempts at explanation of it. And right. I think that is freaking amazing. And it was so smart. And it's like, of course, this is it. Like, oh, it's just so good.
And it's so cool because there's so many little details and effects that they do that are just so cool and just help build this world without like shoving in your face like this is how it works. Like the spacesuits themselves. I thought this was really cool. I guess it's not quite world building, but like when you see them and they're walking into that alien spaceship and they just walk in, I think it really helps the mood of the film because you watch them walking in and you hear like them breathing like they're underwater and you see like the smoke coming out of their suits. And it's like, it's just that little detail that like explains how the suits are kind of working while also like adding to the atmosphere and tension of the scene as they're going into this unknown spacecraft. And all you see and hear is just the like as it's coming out of their suits. It's so cool.
That space trucker comment you made earlier, I think, is no more apparent for me than when that is happening, because they do a really cool thing where they're cutting back and forth between like Ripley and everyone who's just sitting in the ship and the folks who are out there, and everyone who's just still in the ship is just sitting there just like, all right, like, let's freaking get this over with. And so you're seeing these people crawl these terrifying situations while everyone is on the ship being like, all right, like let's get this over, on with the next one, you know. And it is so good. It's so good.
Trucker banter, just like, hey Rip, what you doing? Like over there, and it's like one of the what's really cool is like they all feel like space truckers except for Ash. Ash is the only one that like personality wise is just something different, and it's like that foreshadowing that like Ash is a little off. And then they hit you with the twist that he was a robot the whole time. That was specifically designed like, we're going to get this alien and bring it back, and we're not going to tell the rest of the crew. There's something off about Ash, and it doesn't hit you until the end. That's like, Ash is a freaking robot. And that scene when they show he's a robot is so morbid and gross.
It's amazing.
It's like
incredible.
It's like The Thing, like in levels of like disgusting, like practical gore, but he's a robot. So instead of like The Thing where it's like you see the blood like spewing out and like the like there's just like the body horror. Ash is like a robot, so he's like spewing like white fluids and like has wires, and it's disgusting, but it's disgusting in a different way. It's just like morbid in the, but it's not like overemphasizing like how gory. There's not much gore in this film at all. No. And that's really cool because so many movies. I mean, there's blood.
Yeah, but frankly, like even Halloween by modern standards.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to someone, she's like, "Oh, I didn't really watch because I hate things with a lot of blood." And I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know, as far as blood goes, like, I mean, there's horrific deaths in Halloween, but both of these movies are like the end.
They're not very gory at all.
No, and what I will just say is kind of going on with the set design. Both these movies, another thing that they do really well is that sense of place is really strong. Mm-hmm. When she goes back to get Jones, the cat, after she has kind of ran off and done everything, she's like, oh no, I got to go back. When she comes back, like you have become acutely aware because of that physical set. You understand where she's walking because she's walked down that hallway before and she's gone through this door before, and you're familiar with this ship. And it's really cool the way that it structures this. I think what I loved about that scene where she's walking back is at that point you're familiar with the space, but this time when she's walking back, all she has is this flamethrower. And it's like a really long single shot take of her walking down this corridor with nothing pretty. I mean, you have like some strobes, and then you just have this flame just doing this, and it was haunting and incredible. Yeah, I'm just in love with that movie. And I think the as far as kind of tying off the theme, kind of last but not least, I would say that her at the end, as she kills it, she's singing to herself like you're my lucky star, or anyways, lucky star, something lucky star, I don't remember. But that idea of luck, I think, well, her strength and her bravery and her intelligence is definitely what gets her to the end. I think that whole chunk there where she is walking, slowly loading and kind of preparing as she is just staring at the alien that is just entangled with the ship. It really shows that in the end of the day, this was about luck. Yeah. Like this was about like there was nothing they could really do in the end. Like what she did was smart, obviously, like you wouldn't get there without her. But that the theme also is, it was just luck and sheer determination, and that was the only way she got through it.
Exactly.
So anyways, I talked for a while there about a ton of different things.
It's really cool.
I could just rant.
I mean, you're totally fine. Incredible. I think the other thing that's important to talk about with the movie Alien is the alien itself.
Oh, of course.
And we have to talk about the xenomorph itself and the face hugger and the chest burster. It's all important to talk about with that. What they did really well, because you can see it very briefly, the alien suit is so goofy looking when you get it like in full. It's literally just a 7 foot
little rubbery.
It's very rubbery. It's I think it was played by a 7'2" Nigerian man to make it tall and very, very like skinny and like trying to make it look as like not human as possible. And like they designed the suit without eyes. Like the alien doesn't have eyes specifically for the purpose of like making it look soulless. But how they make it effective with this ridiculous suit, whereas other movies would really like just go to town like showing you this creature, they really do their best to hide it through most of the movie, and they do it effectively. Like when what's his name, Brett, I think it was killed. When he was whistling for the cats.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's just
everything is so good.
And all you see is the close up of its mouth. It makes it effective and makes it horrifying without showing you it. And they really hide it. This movie has one of the most effective jump scares in horror movies when like the Captain Dallas is hunting for it. And they're like, Dallas is coming for you. And he's looking around. He's like, oh, okay. And he goes to crawl away. And then it's just right there. And it bursts out at him and just stops. And it's really effective. The creature design on these is so good. The lore on it is so good. Like the way they build this creature as a threat without having it like show up for most of the movie. It's just lurking and they know it's there and they're like trying to figure out how to like get away from it and stop it.
Did you hear about at all or learn about you probably when you talk about the lore behind it and stuff, but the way that they the mindset that he went into in terms of the design of the creatures and the way that it killed.
How is it?
It was, how can we make this as terrifying for men as possible?
Yeah.
Because it is about this alien thing, this queen, right? That goes in and plants her eggs into a host.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's happening to men. And literally that symbolism, and I think there's a book about it. That symbolism is permeated through that entire movie.
Yeah.
And you see, and when you watch, you're like, wow, it's subtle, but it's like, oh wow, okay, like, anyways, oh my gosh, I could just talk about the shots in this movie all day.
It is, and I would love for you to do it. But I gotta say this real quick before I let you do that.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned like laying the eggs in the chest burster.
Yeah.
I need to talk about that chest burster scene.
Yeah.
Because like rewatching and analyzing, that is obviously probably the most iconic scene in the whole movie. And what makes it so good is like listening to the Alien again. It has a very distinct soundtrack to it. It has like a very strong like sci-fi horror movie score that just really helps like set the mood of the film. And then I can't remember who it was. It was played by John Hurt. I know that. Which, fun fact, John Hurt shows up in Spaceballs, right?
Beautiful. Perfect.
If you didn't know, John Hurt makes a cameo in Spaceballs. You've seen Spaceballs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He shows up, and they're in the diner. And the alien bursts out of
was
John
that him?
Hurt's chest.
I didn't know that was
John
him.
Hurt again.
It's been
and
forever
he literally
since I saw
says, as the alien creature bursts out of his chest before it starts doing the
dance.
hello, my baby, hello, my honey. You literally hear him say, not again, as it bursts out. Just a little fun fact for you.
That's fun.
But what's really cool is that they completely say nah to any form of soundtrack during the chest burster scene. And it's just very innocent at first. Everyone's just sitting around doing their own thing. And then it like zooms in on John Hurt. And then you see him just like start to spasm. It's the goriest scene in the movie, besides, if you count it, Ash's like scene.
I mean, Ash's scene in its own way, I think
it's pretty horrifying, but it's not quite gory.
Yeah.
This was the bloodiest
Yeah.
scene when he's like on the table screaming in pain, and just a fountain of blood like spurts out from his chest, and this alien like pops out. I don't know if this is true, but it's often spread around the idea that the actors were kept in the dark of what was going to happen during the scene.
I think it came out that was a rumor, and
yeah, I'm
it
pretty sure
didn't
that's
actually
just a
happen,
rumor, but they say that.
Yes.
But what makes it really effective is the idea that they just cut out any form of score and just let the scene like
just exist with this person
just
screaming
exist.
and writhing on the table as this thing.
Especially when so much of the movie has like the score is like horrifying things are happening. They just cut it and let like the scene speak for itself, and it's so good and it's so horrifying.
My favorite thing I think I've learned in movies is when they let things breathe, and this movie does that all the time. Like when he's whistling for the cat. I mean that is a long extended period of time where he's just looking for this cat, and there's a scene where he's looking up into that kind of it looks like, I don't know, it's dropping water. I don't know if it's a coolant thing or whatever. It's very bizarre, but he's just sitting there like taking the water in, and you're like, oh, okay, so this is where the alien comes down from there and kills him. And it doesn't. And you think like, okay, when is this jump scare going to happen? Because they've false jump scared you about 4 times up to this point. And then what happens is the alien just kind of just shows up in the background and kills him. And it's oh my gosh.
And like the cat like scene where it's like you see the cat like freaking out. Fun fact about that, another trivia fact. To get the cat to react, they had a German Shepherd behind a screen, and when they needed the cat to act scared, they'd pull up the scrend and the cat would react to this German Shepherd.
That's wonderful.
So that's just a final Easter egg. Do you have any other thoughts on Alien want to share real quick?
I'll just say, like for me, it's a 10 out of 10. I just am in love with everything that movie does, every part of it.
It's such a good film.
Anyways, as someone who just loves suspense and loves tension, that movie was like my favorite thing ever. So yeah,
it's a very good movie. I give it a 9 out of 10.
Fair.
And it's only because like I enjoy it. The only reason I rate it lower than Halloween is because I have a flippin' fanboy.
Look,
for
that's
Halloween.
good because I'm total fanboy. I have an Alien, I'll probably get a poster soon. I love it. I have a sweatshirt with Alien on it. I hadn't even seen the movie.
It's so great to finally watch this. Like, well, I've seen it, but it's great for you to finally watch it because like in our video classes, this movie's trailer is so often used as like the quintessential like make your trailers like this. And it's so great because they don't tell anything in that trailer. They let the sound design and like the shots they use speak for themselves. And it's so great instead of other movies that spoil the whole film for you. And even then, what's really funny is that they use like a hen egg in the teaser trailer and then used a completely different
I know,
egg
right?
in the
I had
actual
that
movie
thought too. I was like, wait, okay.
Yeah, and it's so good. It's definitely a 9 out of 10 film for me. It's just fantastic and is like one of those movies that you have to watch at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm so sad we can't talk about horror movies longer, but we've really gone into it and we have to kind of wrap it up.
Yes, we do.
So thank you guys for joining us. We hope we haven't scared you guys too much, like with all the horror and spooky, scary elements of the of our show today. I came this close to getting like a skeleton like to sit in for me. Have it hanging up. I was gonna have the skeleton like in my clothes, sitting in my seat, just like talking about it. Would have been in costume or something like that. So we will be doing another movie next week. I think we're gonna go see
Peanut Butter Falcon, maybe.
Let's do it. Let's do the Peanut Butter Falcon.
We'll see. It might be different.
I say yes to the Peanut Butter Falcon.
Sick.
I'm just sad that I don't get my free small fries. So
Yes.
yeah. So let's go see the Peanut Butter Falcon. And so join us next week when we talk about that. Depending on where you're watching us, we are available on Spotify and Anchor every Saturday. I almost said Thursday. That would have been embarrassing. We are available on Anchor and Spotify every Thursday, as well as many other sites such as I think Apple Podcasts, iTunes, things like that. And then we are on YouTube every Wednesday if you would rather watch us talk about our films. And so join us then. Join us when we talk about the Peanut Butter Falcon. And thank you guys for joining us today to talk about, just reflect on some incredible movies. And we will see you guys again next week.